Hello and welcome to Tartan Touchdown Episodes, our weekly look at all things NFL. Another week has flown by and we're almost at the halfway point of the season so far. On this week's episode, we'll take you through the big stories from the Week 8 in the NFL. Joining me tonight is a fellow NFC East fan and someone like me who did not have a victory Monday. Scav, how are you?
I don't know if it's an NFL or an NFC fan or an NFC masochist, to be honest, the way the last few weeks have gone. But I'm doing good. It's a tough weekend for both you and I, so we might need a bit of mutual therapy, but let's see how it goes.
Yeah, this is turning in generally to a therapy session each week for all of us, especially when Brian's on. We're all kind of helping each other through some difficult times this season. But anyway, let's move on to some other teams who may be having more positive things than us. So on this week's show, we'll take a look at a couple of teams that might be on a comeback trail. We'll look at the playoff picture as it currently stands, and me and Gav will add our playoff predictions. And then I've got a fun segment for Gav that he has no knowledge of ahead of, where I'm basically going to get his thoughts on some of the games from this weekend, some teams, some players, some coaches, and see what has went on in the NFL this week. So, before we get into this week's action, let's make sure you're following us on Instagram and TikTok for our latest content from all across the world of American football, and also subscribe to us on YouTube and all podcast platforms so you don't miss out on episodes every week. So, coming into this season, these two teams are predicted to have a good run into the postseason, and one of them definitely had Super Bowl expectations within their fan base. However, coming into Week 8, they had a combined record of 3-9 through 6 games each. The corner might be turning, and with the help of their divisional rivals not exactly running away from them, apart from maybe the Colts, they're still in with a shot of the playoffs. So first of all, let's talk about the Houston Texans. After they defeated the 49ers this week, they currently sit at 3-4, but they're only one game back from the Jags in second place in the division. Are the Texans on their way back?
It is tough to say. I think if you look at that record, 3-4, last night wasn't and there's no such thing as a bad win, so let's start with that. But they did have home field advantage. The Niners, I think, are a good team. But let's not kid ourselves. They've had a really rough stretch and they've been doing very well to get to where they are. Funnily enough, I still have hopes for the 49ers being able to make a crack at the postseason. But at the same time, it's a small sample size for the Texans. And the other thing is, as you mentioned, we've got a runaway leader in the AFC South in the Colts. I think they will very quickly get to double-digit wins, so they're going to lock up the home field playoff spot from that division. And even, the Jaguars, they've been a bit more unpredictable, but at the same time, if you were to put them in a foot race against the Texans, I'm still liking the Jags for a wild card spot.
I think so. Oh, so I think you said, I think the Jags is problem, and I think the Texans this season have been inconsistent. I'm not going to deny that, but I think the Jags' inconsistency is going to cost them more than the Texans, because the Texans, I feel, have got enough in that offense to outshoot any team if they turn up. And going into the postseason is going to be they're going to have to score a lot of points in the rest of the season. My one reservation about the Texans is their schedule for the rest of the season. It is not a pretty schedule for them to try and get to the playoffs with. So as you mentioned, they've just come off a win over the 49ers, which is a tough game. They then have the Broncos next. They've 2 games that were very winnable in terms of the Jaguars and the Titans. And then they go Buffalo, Colts, KC. So they have a really difficult schedule. It just depends on what the rest of the NFC does and whether they can overtake the Jags into second place, whether they can get a wild card place. I think it's there. I think it's up for grabs for them. And I think they are starting to show the offensive prowess that we've seen from them last year. In terms of Texans, they're on their way back. Are they going to make a full comeback and make their way to the playoffs? I still think it's a bit debatable, but I would probably give them a favourable chance if they can play as well as they did. I know the 49ers are banged up, but that's still a very good 49ers team they played.
I think if you look at that schedule, what I would say is it's absolutely critical for them to come through these next 2 games with at least 1 win, both at home. So the Broncos are, I think, starting to live up to everyone's sort of pre-season hot take now that this is going to be a good year for them. They're 6-2, they're leading the AFC West. But Texans, they do have home field advantage. And I think when you compare perhaps the Broncos to the likes of the Bills, the Colts have been dominant, and of course the Chiefs, those are really, really tough games. A few of them, the Texans are going to have to go on the road for those. So I think there is a scenario where if they don't win from those next two games, they could very well get deep into December, and they're still only in 4 wins.
Yeah, I mean, they have got the Titans the week after, so I think if they got 2 out of 3 wins over the next 3 weeks, they'll put themselves in a good position, because the Jags over the next weeks have got the Raiders, obviously the Texans, and the Chargers. So the Jaguars will be looking to come out of there. Obviously, the Jaguars will be looking for 3 wins, but I think the Jaguars will be like, if we get 2 wins out of those 3, especially if one of them is the Texans, then I think the Jaguars then push on and take second place in the division. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in terms of the Texans. But I'm looking forward to seeing how they go over the next few weeks. So in our pick this week, Gav, you will know that I initially picked the Chicago Bears to beat the Baltimore Ravens. When I then heard that the Baltimore Ravens had activated Stuart Huntley at quarterback ahead of Cooper Rush, I flipped onto the Ravens, and they did not let me down. I said weeks ago that Cooper Rush was not the man for them. Stuart Huntley was the man for them. So a strong performance saw them run out 30-16 winners this week against the Bears, with Huntley doing nothing flashy, but he'd done enough to get them the win. So now the Ravens are currently sitting at 2-5. Coming into the season, they were in one of the toughest divisions in the league. However, that's not really played out how we were expecting. We just mentioned before we came on here, the Steelers are currently sitting top of the division at 4-3. So the Ravens, without Lamar Jackson for all these weeks, are still currently sitting only 2 games back on the Steelers. It is a short week from this week because they play the Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. So I'd be very surprised if Lamar Jackson suited up and played on Thursday night, especially when Huntley had a good enough game. That team should be good enough to beat the Dolphins and not risk Lamar. If Lamar's 100% good to go, then fine. But if he's not, don't risk him. So I reckon they win Thursday Night Football, which puts them in a very good position. The problem the Steelers have, the Steelers visit the Colts next week. So the time we come round to week 10, the Ravens could be 1 game back on the Steelers. That would be an incredible position for them to be in, based on what we all expected to happen with the Ravens when Lamar Jackson went out. I know they lost these games and they've only got 2 wins, but to be only 2 games back, I think is a ridiculous position for them in, and a very, very favourable position for them to be in. I think the Ravens are back. I know we said the Texans right back. I think if Lamar Jackson comes back this week, definitely back the week after, I think the Ravens are on their way back, and I can see them going on and taking that division. What's your thoughts on the Ravens?
Yeah, I think with when all else fails, you can always look to Vegas for a bit of guidance. And I think what's been really interesting with this particular division is that even though the Steelers kind of shot out to an early lead, I think they were 3 games up on the Ravens a couple of weeks ago. Vegas still had the Ravens as favourites to win this division, and that's. I think it's looking ever more inevitable that that's going to be the case now. The fact of the matter is that the Ravens have lost their QB1 MVP in Lamar Jackson for several weeks. So it's not a surprise that it's been tough for them lately. If we look at some of the other games that they've lost, of course, they've played the Chiefs, who are absolutely rebounding. They've lost week 1 in a squeaker on the road to the Bills, which I think those are losses that you can start to excuse in the context. Obviously, they'll have wanted to win, but compared to certain other teams, like perhaps the Bengals last night blowing a lead at home to the Jets, I think we can say that, the Ravens, a number of those 5 losses, you can kind of account for them. And as you mentioned, everything's kind of been going right for them elsewhere in the division. The Browns have always been the Browns, but Cincinnati, Pittsburgh both dropped games this week. All of a sudden, Baltimore, 2-5 is never a pretty record, but they're only 2 games back on the division lead. And ultimately, they do have the roster. Derrick Henry's still there. Lamar is going to come back, perhaps not quite as quickly as some of the injury reports had suggested. But ultimately, everyone needs to deal with injuries at some point, but Baltimore are getting healthy at the right time, and they're in striking distance in that division.
Yeah, I think the thing about the Ravens is the games that they've lost will maybe excuse the Texans for a minute, but I think the games they've lost this year, they could have lost them with Lamar Jackson playing as well. They lost to the Bills, they lost to the Lions, they lost to the Chiefs, and they lost to the Rams. Those are games that they were not gimmies. It's not as if they've lost games without Lamar Jackson. You think, well, that was the Ravens would have definitely won that game. Yes, they would have been a good shot of winning those games. But then the game where you think they should win last night against the Bears, they won fairly comfortably. So And I think it's in the Ravens' favour is their schedule. When I looked up for the Ravens' schedule earlier on, I was very surprised at how, I'm not going to say soft their schedule is, but that's probably the way to describe it. I cannot see, if Lamar Jackson comes back, either this week or next week, I cannot see the Ravens losing a game till at least week 16, which is the Patriots. They get the Patriots and then the Packers 16 and 17, and then they finish with the Steelers. If they can go through the rest of the season by only losing another 2 games, they're going to win that division. That's the way it's going to be. There is a tough couple of games in there, but Lamar Jackson playing those games you expect those Ravens to win. So we'll see how the Ravens go. Like I said, I don't think they're rushing back on Thursday night with a short week, but it depends how close he was to playing on Sunday. But I think he'll definitely be back for the Vikings game in a week and a half's time. So yeah, that's fine. I think the Ravens are back, and we'll come to the playoffs in a bit. But I think the Ravens are destined for the postseason if Lamar Jackson's back within the next 2 weeks. Excellent. As I mentioned there, we'll have a quick look at the playoffs. As I mentioned at the start, we are about halfway through the season, just to give or take 2 or 3 days until we're halfway through the season. We're going to have our first proper look at the playoff picture so far this season. What we're going to do is have a look at how the playoff picture currently sits, and then we're going to have a look at how me and Gav think things might stay the same or might change between now and the end of the season. So, first of all, Gav, we will start with the NFC. So, current leaders in the NFC of their divisions, we have the Packers, the Eagles, the Bucks, and the Seahawks. So, of those 4 teams, how many of them do you still see sitting in that position come week 18?
I mean, there's a couple that are iffy to look at this. I think the one that jumps out has been completely up in the air still is the NFC West. I mean, there's 3 teams on 5 wins, and I think you could argue that it could go any one of 3 ways between each of them. So I think I actually do think that given how much they've had to deal with in the hanging in there, the 49ers could overhaul the Seahawks. So, with all respect to Seattle fans, I'm going to say that you're on a shaky peg where you are at the moment. NFC South, Tampa Bay's going to run with that one. I think they're quite comfortable. And I think similarly the NFC East, the Eagles, they've got that one locked up. NFC North, I think at the start of the season, everyone thought Packers are competitors for a deep postseason run. I think though half a game back, the Lions are going to overtake them. So for me, I think, it's 2 out of the 4 are locked in.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with the Bucks and the Eagles definitely. The Seahawks just seem to be just doing enough at the moment. They've come off a bye week and are still top of the division, which is always a good position to be in. Can they hold on to that top? I get a sneaky suspicion the Rams might come back and take that. The Rams have looked good. Matt Stafford has been Matt Stafford. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams have looked good for them. They've got a running game going. Their schedule isn't looking too difficult either. A couple of games, obviously, all division games, obviously, in the NFC West are all going to be tough, apart from when they play the Cardinals, which is key. The Rams still have got to play the Cardinals twice. And they finish up away home to the Cardinals as well. That could be key for them. Is that last game is against the Cardinals. So I'm going to go with the Rams to sneak the NFC West. The North, watching the Packers are really good to watch. They've got Christian Watson come back. He had a good game last night as well. It's going to be tough for them. Like you said, there is that half a game tie now they're sitting there that could come back to bite them, but and they were lucky to get that tie. They nearly blew that away. The Bears and the Vikings, I'm ruling out already. Not even going to challenge the Lions or the Packers, but I'm going to go with the Packers just to keep going, and I think the Packers will take it. That's where I'm going to go with that one. So I'm going 2. So I saw 3 to currently stay where they are. I think the one that will change, the same as you, is that NFC West, but I'm going to go with the Rams to take the NFC West.
And I think it's hard to actually argue. It's the NFC West, I think you can argue it anyway. The interesting thing with the Rams is really they were only a blocked field goal away from beating the Eagles on the road. Yeah. And if that happens, they're actually in the number 1 seed spot at the moment, best record in the NFC. And I think NFC North is going to be really tight. The big thing to watch out for is, I think, Thanksgiving Day in 4 weeks' time. That's going to be massive. First game of the afternoon, Green Bay against the Lions at Ford Field. Yeah. That is going to have massive implications for the postseason.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's a good thing about the NFC. Looking at the games that we've seen this week, like we said, we've already mentioned the 49ers lost to the Texans this week. So I think with we mentioned they've got those injuries, but if you've got aspirations to go and win your division, you should potentially be beating a Texans team that haven't been firing on all cylinders this season. So I think the 49ers have got a bit of work to do there. Seahawks come off the bye. Cardinals aren't even worth talking about. And the Rams, it didn't play this week either. So, yeah, NFC West, I think that's how we're going to go. I think the Rams will come and take that. So, as a result of that, let's just bounce down a wee level then. So, currently in the wildcard positions, we've got the Lions, the Rams, and the 49ers. All right. So, on your flip side of that, the Packers would drop into the wildcard. So, who are you having as the other two teams? Are you having the two NFC West teams as your other two wildcard teams?
Yeah, I do think on paper they are the best teams. You know, if the playoffs were to kick off today, that just feels right. That feels like a good bracket. I guess the one that I'm maybe keeping an eye on, they were actually my kind of dark horse pick at the start of the season, Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
So they're 4-4. Obviously, they're on the outside looking in as things stand, but they are in that NFC South. So, yes, I think we both agree Tampa Bay is going to lock that division in, far and away the best side there. But Panthers have got the Falcons, and there's a reason that the Falcons keep popping up in our pick six competition every week, because you just don't know what you're getting. And when they are bad, they are appallingly bad. I think that's twice they've been absolutely hammered this season. And obviously, Saints 1-7 speaks for itself. Actually focusing on the Panthers themselves, it's a team that just seems to be kind of incrementally improving. I mean, given that they've constantly been picking at the top of the draft, I mean, after both the New York teams, I think most people, if you were asked to list the worst teams in the NFL over the last few years, you would probably gravitate towards the Panthers after that. And they have started to, make those little improvements. I think Bryce Young has maybe not set the world on fire, but I think no one is really saying at this point that he's not the guy in Carolina. There is a toughness, there is a resilience, and I think for them, it's really going to come down again to the schedule, which I'm just having a look at just now.
It's not favourable at all, I'll be honest. I've got it here. Next couple of weeks, so they've got the Packers, they play the Saints, which you'd expect one, but they've got the Falcons, the 49ers, the Rams, back to the Saints, Bucks, Seattle, Bucks. So they basically played Bucks twice in the last 3 weeks of the season. That's going to be tough.
Tough, but I guess, and it's similar to when we talked about the Texans earlier. One of the things that might be interesting is we'll look at these divisional games late in the season. If you're facing the divisional leader, there's a chance that they're locked in by that point. So actually, playing the Bucks next week, that's a tough game. If you've got them week 18, you might get a bit of leeway in that one. I think the Packers game this week is really interesting because, as Sarah and Brian talked about last week, there are still some questions about that Packers side. Absolutely really big ceiling on the team, but they also lost to the Browns. So it's been, it is there to beat them. And I guess that's when we talk about the division and how the NFC South is soft to a degree, but you're still going to have to go and play some of these other teams and pick up a few wins. So again, that's a real test game for the Panthers coming up next week if they can.
I think the Panthers are building something. Like Bryce Young's been injured the last couple of weeks. I think he's due back next week. Ted McMillan got 99 yards yesterday. Rico Dowdle we've seen over maybe a bit quieter this week, but we've seen what he's done over the last few weeks. So they have got the weapons there in terms of they've got a running back that's picking up the yards. They've got a receiver that's picking up the yards. And they just need to find that consistency, whether it's Andy Dalton or Bryce Young that's playing at quarterback. Andy Dalton, we're talking about this as if the Panthers got absolutely hosed by the Bills last night, 40-9. That's not anything to be ashamed of, to be fair, right? It is the Bills, and it was James Cook running 216 yards right down their throats last night and scoring 2 touchdowns. So there's no shame in losing that game. They would have been in that game seeing it as a free hit. But they've come out of that game and they're still 4-4, they're still sitting in the 500. So that loss I don't feel that loss damages the Panthers at all. I just don't see enough in that Panthers squad yet that's going to get them to a record that's going to be good enough for the wild card. So I agree that, I've went Packers to win the North. So Lions will go in there. I've said the Rams to win the West. I do feel that there will be another West team in there. I still, and I'm just being crazy, but I still have aspirations that the Cowboys somehow squeak into that wild card position. We were terrible yesterday. Well, I say we're terrible. We get hosed off the Broncos. It was 44-24. Too many interceptions, too many mistakes, too many penalties was basically what cost us the game, but I still think we've got a chance. CD Lamb and Pickens both over 70 yards last night. Javonte Williams another 2 touchdowns. We have the offense to beat anybody. We just don't have the defense to stop anybody at the moment. It did look as if the defense was clicking last week. This week didn't really work. J.K. Dobbins run for 111 yards on us. Yeah, I think we've still got a shout, and I'm still going to hang on to that hope that we can get a wild card spot. So I'm going to say it.
I'll put a question to you then. What do the Cowboys need to do to be good enough for the playoffs? Because they do have those first round picks from the Micah Parsons trade sitting there, but do you want to spend them in season to try and upgrade the roster, or part of that?
It's the worst kept secret in the NFL at the moment. The Cowboys are in the market for an edge rusher. We have went to the Raiders and they've told us where to go. For Max Crosby, he apparently said that he doesn't want to leave either, so there's no case of they want to go to the Cowboys. We went to the Bengals and asked them for Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals then said, nope, you're not getting him. So we are in the market to use those up, but then where does that value sit? That's where you've got to question. Do you give up a first round draft pick to get someone who's maybe not that elite edge rusher because you need it? So I think we need that. We need someone on that line that's going to put pressure on the quarterback, because our secondary in the first few weeks of the season was just terrible because the quarterbacks were getting all day to throw. Do you know what I mean? So there was no pressure on them. Players last season that we've seen stepping up, we've just not had that pressure on the quarterback this year. So yeah, 100% Jerry Jones is in the right market for the right type of player. It's just if we can get one that's going to make that impact that is worth paying the bucks for. Time will tell. We've got another, was it the 4th of November, is it the deadline? Or the 5th, 4th,
that's right.
5th of November. Got another week or so until the trade deadlines. If we can get an edge rusher in, then I'd be happy. I don't know who's about that we could potentially look at getting in the secondary, because Trayvon Diggs is still out with concussion. Do not know what's going on there. But even when he has played, he's not looked like the Trayvon Diggs that we know. Ron Bland, 6 interception last week, pick 6 last week. Okay, but that secondary is looking very porous, so we maybe need a bit of help in there as well. So it'll be interesting to see what we do. I would give up the first to get an elite edge rusher, but I would be struggling to push it any more than that if it's not someone that's at the top of the game. So ask me again after the deadline if I still think we can make the wild card. And we're playing the Cardinals next week on Monday Night Football, so that should be a win that gets us back on track. So, the other team that's on the bubble of the playoffs currently at the moment, Garrett, is the only other team that has a winning record in the NFC, is the Bears. I ruled them out very quickly. Like we mentioned earlier on, the Ravens beat them comfortably with Stuart Huntley at quarterback. Do the Bears sneak a wild card spot for you, or do you think they're done?
Yeah, I think when we compare it to the other teams, I think there's just too many questions around them, and it all comes back to the quarterback position for me. I think we've all been chatting in a group about, is Caleb Williams really the guy? Obviously came in first overall pick last season, and he's had his moments, but I think there's just too many points where you're thinking something's not quite right there. There was a throw that he missed, a wide open receiver in the end zone late on in that game for the Ravens. To me, I'm thinking, okay, maybe that's not going to win you the game, but I'm still looking for you to make those plays, give your team a chance. Obviously, then you got to go and get the onside kick to get the ball back. But yeah, I don't get the feeling that he's a player that is going to elevate this team. I do think that maybe Ben Johnson is going to do a job eventually for the Bears, but I think this year is too soon for them.
Yeah, and they are in that division, like we mentioned, with the Lions and the Packers. The Vikings are in rebuild mode as well, so we don't know what's going to happen when J.J. McCarthy comes back. I don't think either the Bears or the Vikings get a shout, but just going the Bears, yeah, not consistent enough, not showing enough for me in terms of being a playoff team, so we'll rule them out. All right, before we switch over to the AFC, Gav, right, I've got a trivia question for you. Again, I've never prepped Gav this before we came on. I see that he doesn't know what's coming here. There are 4 players in the NFL this season that have 4 games with 3 or more touchdowns. Can you name them?
They have 4 games
with 3 or more touchdowns to their name.
in this season.
Yes. This could be throwing, receiving, or rushing.
That seems far too low.
4 players with 3. They've got 4 games this season where they have scored at least 3 touchdowns.
Okay.
Bear in mind, we're only just finished week 8.
They've
So
got to
in
go
half the
with
games
that,
this season,
I think I'm feeling quarterbacks. It's really Daniel Jones is one of them. Jonathan Taylor.
yes. So that's the end of the question, because that was the point I was trying to get to. So the 4 players: Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, Drake May, Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor has 4 3-touchdown games so far this season. And we wonder why the Colts are sitting where they are at 7-1. You know what I mean? Yes, Daniel Jones has reinvigorated his career, but Jonathan Taylor is on for absolutely astronomical numbers this season so far. He
It's a
has
yin-yang.
14 touchdowns altogether already.
Yeah, it's a yin-yang situation, I think, in Indy. That's really the dream situation for any franchise and offensive coordinator. You have Jonathan Taylor, who has always been an elite running back, but now he has a serviceable quarterback that's taking a bit of pressure off of him.
Yes.
He's not facing these stacked looks because the receivers are also there, so there's multiple weapons on that Colts team. And similarly for Daniel Jones, he's been running for his life in New York, but now he has a running back that's taking a bit of pressure off of him as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think a lot of people are surprised by the Colts' success, but really, I think you've got Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor both feeding each other in this case.
I think people are surprised, and I think not by maybe necessarily the Colts themselves as a team. I think it's the Daniel Jones factor that's surprising people. I think people looked at the Colts and thought, you've got Jonathan Taylor, you've got good receivers there, you've picked up Tyler Warren at tight end. If you can put a good quarterback in there, you've got a good team. I just don't think people thought that Daniel Jones was that quarterback. And you mentioned it there. How many times do we say that a quarterback needs a good running back? So to stop a quarterback having to throw every single play, and indeed it was the flip. They needed a quarterback that could be serviceable to stop them having to run the ball all the time, and they've got that balance. Somebody can fact check this for me. I read this just before we came on here, so I couldn't fact check it at all. Somebody said that people were calling for Saquon Barkley to be MVP the year that he got 14 rushing touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor has 12 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns after 8 games. So is it Jonathan Taylor for MVP already? That's the question that's getting thrown out there. He's first in the NFL for every stat you can think of for a running back this season. So I just thought we'd flip that over and it gives us a chance to sing their praises before we went into talking about the playoffs for the AFC. Very same format as we did for the NFC, Gav. We'll look at the divisional leaders and then we'll chat about where we think they're going to go. As obviously, as we've just said, Colts 7-1. Top of the division. We've got the Patriots in the AFC East, we've got the Broncos in the AFC West, and we mentioned already the Steelers are sitting at top of the AFC North. So, for me, I think that only 4 of those teams will finish. Sorry, one of those 4 teams will finish in the top of the division. For me, it's the Colts. Nobody in that division is going to stop the Colts. We discussed it and we talked about the Texans and the Jags. Nobody is going to stop the Colts. Or the AFC West, I am going to say that the Chiefs are going to come back and win that. I just think the Chiefs are on their way back. I think the Chiefs, now they've got Rashee Rice back, they've got the weapons there. I think Brian mentioned last week that Tyquan Thornton is doing some good stuff for them at receiver as well. The Chiefs will play the Commanders tonight. This is for everyone who's watching us, and we record this on a Monday. The Chiefs play the Commanders tonight, spoiler alert. The Chiefs will win tonight against the Commanders. So I think the Chiefs are on their way back. So I have the Chiefs taking the West. I think the Bills will come back and take the East. I think the Patriots have looked good, but for me, I think the Bills will come back and win that. And then I think the Ravens win the North. So for me, Colts, Bills, Chiefs, Ravens. No surprises there, probably. To be fair, at the start of the season, if you'd said that was going to be 3 of the 4, you'd be like, yeah, let's just close it all down now and start the Chiefs. Bills and the Ravens are going to win their division. But the way the season started, that was not how it looks. Out of those 4 current leaders, how many of you got sitting top of the tree come the end of the season?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a lot of argument between the two of us in terms of the division winners. I will probably just, maybe not a bit of controversy, but maybe building on it a bit further, I think the Colts are going to take the 1 seed. Obviously, they're already in that position, but I actually think they're going to power ahead and lock up the 1 seed. I think the schedule, for the most part, looks pretty favourable for them. I think there is very much a scenario where they only drop a game to the Chiefs potentially in the next 6 weeks or so. And yeah, they're already on, like I said, double-digit wins come the beginning of December, and then it's just about building up for playoff position after that. Things are looking really good in Indy right now, and get absolute confidence in them. The rest, we've already talked to the FC North. Ravens are absolutely coming back in that one. I'm sorry, Steelers fans, but yeah, I think your days in that, that playoff spot are numbered. The Broncos are a really interesting one because, again, highly fancied by a lot of people to do great things this season, and on the face of it, that they're looking good at 6-2. They have to face the Chiefs twice. That's still to come in the schedule. That is going to be a massive barometer of what they're going to accomplish this season. Certainly, if they want to hang on to playoff position, then they need to take at least one of those two games against the Chiefs. Certainly, the way they've been beaten up in our teams in respective weeks, or at least piling the points on. Certainly, there's a lot to be excited about in Denver, but they're still a young team. I know there's a lot of excitement around Bo Nix, and again, someone who very much looks like the guy, but there's still going to be bumps in the road. Whereas the Chiefs have been here so many times before, there is an inevitability about them that you have to like them to take over the AFC West. I guess, having said that, the interesting thing would be if the Chiefs were to go into the playoffs as a wild card, that could massively wreck some people's brackets.
Yeah. I mean, I think for that, I think we've got a couple of teams that were sitting there, like they mentioned the Patriots. So the Patriots beat the Browns last night 32-13, a game they'd expect to win. So the Patriots have just kept going. But as you mentioned earlier on, the Bills blew out the Panthers again. Not unexpected, to be fair. The Broncos beating the Cowboys 44-24 looks good. But you mentioned there, they put up the points against you last week, but I think you had them on the ropes for 3 quarters. So the Broncos, I know that it sounds really daft because they've just won 5 in a row, right? I'm not going to say they need to find consistency, but it comes to these games where they need to put a marker down and put their foot down and go, we are here to stay and we are here to win. You can say that the win against you last week was a kind of a statement of we can come back and we win, but they should never put themselves in that position in the first place to have to put those points up in the fourth quarter. If you've got aspirations to go deep into the postseason, you can't be that far back in the fourth quarter against anybody. Because a decent team, and I'm not no disrespect to the Giants, sorry Gav, but a decent team will not let you come back in the fourth quarter to the level they did last week.
Stats show that it's an unprecedented comeback that the Broncos put up. I think it was interesting to see where people were kind of making the takeaways from this game. Some people were saying that, Bo Nix is outstanding and the loss was getting pinned on Jackson Dart from a Giants perspective, which is a little bit strange because he only really had the one turnover. But absolutely the alarm bell, which I think most people can see, is why did the Giants ship 33 points in one quarter? And I think the other thing to consider there is home field probably had a little bit of a factor in that for the Broncos as well. I don't think if you're on the road, you build up that same momentum, the comeback, the crowd gets back into it. The Broncos, I think, probably putting up 44 points throughout the game against the Cowboys. Obviously, they have the defensive frailties, but that's more of a statement in the sense that they were consistent throughout.
Yeah.
But they are going to have to go and do that against better teams if they want to be real contenders.
Yeah, I mean, last night they put up 14 points in the first quarter, 13 in the second quarter, only 3 in the third, but 14 again in the fourth. So they were putting up at least 2 scores every quarter, apart from the third quarter, which is what they're going to have to do. You can't rely on the fourth quarter to get all your points. You get away with that once. You don't get away with it again, especially against teams that have got playoff aspirations themselves. Right, so I said Colts, Bills, Chiefs, Ravens. Are you agreeing with those 4?
I think as much as the Broncos might do, I'm still leaning towards the Chiefs.
Right, so that then makes the wild cards very interesting because you've got the Steelers currently leading the division, the Broncos and the Chargers. Let's not forget about the Chargers here. The Chargers are currently sitting at 5-3, and we mentioned the Texans earlier on as well. So give me, who's your 3 wild card teams? If that's the 4 division winners, Who's your 3 wildcard teams?
So for me, I think we look at the teams that are already in position. The Chargers, for me, are going to stay in that hunt. It's a really tough division. I think the Chargers seem to be getting back into rhythm. I think even when they beat the Dolphins last week, they looked a bit wobbly, and some of the losses that they've had haven't been great. But I think it's a Harbaugh-run team. They've got Justin Herbert. I just think that there's too many good pieces in that setup not to take a wild card, given that they're only one game off the lead in the division as things stand. So yeah, for me, Chargers stay in. I think Patriots also, we both like the Bills to overhaul them for the division, but they're doing all the right things. Again, in the division, you look at the teams have got to face. Still, Dolphins, Jets, there's wins to be had on that remaining schedule. So I think, that the Patriots, okay, you're not going to be 2 seed. It's in the wild card bucket, but they will be there. The final slot, I guess, is really up in the air because there's no clear standout. If things had gone a different way yesterday, I might have liked the Bengals to take a wild card, but unfortunately, if you're at home, you have a multi-score lead and you blow that to winless Jets, I'm sorry, your season's bust, so we've got to rule them out. Out of the Jaguars and Steelers, I'm leaning Jaguars.
Yeah, I think you're missing somebody here, Gav. I think you've forgotten about somebody in this whole shake-up. So I'll tell you who mine are, and you'll realise where you probably think we missed a team. So we've got the Colts, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Ravens winning. I have the Patriots finishing second, the Chargers, and the Broncos.
I have missed it.
You're like, there's no standing. I'm like, the Broncos are sitting there, Gav. We've just spoken about them
for me.
So I think we get the 3 AFC West teams in the playoffs this year. I think that's the reason it gets 3. So I think you get the Chiefs winning it with the Broncos and the Chargers both getting wild card spots.
Yeah, apologies to Sarah. We're not going to have a charity wild card to the Jags.
So I mentioned at the start that the Texans could potentially come back and maybe do something, but now looking at the bigger picture of the AFC, they're not going to. Sorry, Texans fans, I gave you a bit of hope at the start. Sorry, Graham, I know you listen in every week, so apologies for that. No, for me, Bills win it. Sorry, we get the Patriots, the Chargers, and the Broncos are my 3 wildcard teams. So I think we've just sorted. We've shut the season down now. We've decreed who's going to be in the playoffs on both sides, and then we'll take it from there. We'll just toss a coin who's going to win from there. So anybody that's watching or listening, we will have some content this week based on this episode. So let us know your thoughts on Instagram and potentially on TikTok. Who you think will make the playoffs come the end of the season. It is halfway through the season. We are doing a bit of a way too early prediction, but it wouldn't be the NFL without a way too early prediction for the playoffs. So that's where we've went with that. All right, Gav, we're on to the segment that you're completely unprepared for, and I'm loving the fact that you have no idea what's coming.
Isn't that the whole point?
Sorry, I didn't want to say that. But folks that are watching, listen, Gav, basically what I want from Gav here is his instant reaction based on some things that have happened across the league. Just to kind of get a natural reaction from him across some of the things that have happened across the league in this week. So what I want from you, Gav, I'm going to tell you the topic, and I want a 1-sentence answer from you, and I'm not going to allow you to have any more than that because that's cheating, all right? So I'm going to start with a very sore one to start with for you. The loss of Cam Scatterable for the Giants.
Simple as it hurts.
For those that are not aware yet, Cam Scatterable dislocated his ankle and is probably torn every ligament in his ankle. I would say go on and watch it, but please don't. It's one of the worst injury videos you will see. It was horrible. We hope that he makes a full recovery, maybe backs him on for the Giants next year, because I was loving watching him this year. And it's just one of those things that he happen all the time. It's someone is just having a breakout season, doing amazing, and then you pick up a really horrific injury. So let's hope he gets a full recovery from that, because it is a bad one. Okay, Gav, staying on the same game, 1-sentence answer on the officiating at the Giants versus Eagles game.
Someone's getting a call into the office. I think there's going to be, I don't think it swung the game, but there was too many contentious calls in this game to go miss.
So Gav's only allowed 1 sentence on this, but I'm allowed to expand on it. That's how this is going on. So if those that haven't seen it, the tush push again came right into focus, where the Eagles went for the tush push, it was stopped, the ball came loose, the ball hit the ground, the Giants recovered it. In the process of the Giants recovering, the ref, one of the wing officials, blew the play dead for forward progress, but he didn't blow the whistle until the ball was out and on the deck. everybody watching it could see that the Jalen Hurts was still fighting for yardage. So yeah, so that was contentious, is what we will say with that one. All right, we've touched on already, Gav. It was the highest scoring game of the weekend, I think. Yes, just Steelers and the Jets. Thoughts on that game?
It was fun at the time, but it'll mean little late in the season.
I like that. That's a good one sentence. All right. I have spoken about Mike McDaniel's been on the hot seat all year this year. Someone else's name for you. Jonathan Gannon. Is he on the hot seat in Arizona?
Wait and see.
That is a very sitting on the fence answer, Gav. I am going to go out and say yes, he is. Yes, he is. The Cardinals are 2-5. They're in a division where they're not going to get anywhere. They're not looking that impressive, and he's already been fined £100,000 this year from the Cardinals for punching one of his own players. So there we go. The inconsistent Falcons, Gav.
I don't know who they are.
Yeah, it's like Kirk Cousins at quarterback last night. We've seen the Falcons this year do very good things, but then we've also seen them twice get absolutely hosed by teams that they should have been beaten. The Panthers beat them 30-0. The Dolphins absolutely hammered them last night, and it wasn't even close at all. It was 34-10. The Falcons just looked absolutely lost last night. Whether that's down to quarterback, whether that's down to anything else, who knows what is going on there? Gav, you may have seen this in the group chat earlier on. And for those that play fantasy football, Baker Mayfield put up an astounding 0.08 points this week. One off, Gav?
I think so. That's one where if you, especially with the clocks going back over the weekend, maybe you went to bed early and you wake up and see that score and think, great, this is a dominant win for the Bucks, lots of points. And then you see the breakdown, like, what the hell?
Baker, I mean, he threw for 15 for 152 yards, no touchdowns. He was sacked twice and fumbled the ball twice, so that screwed him. So we don't tend to often talk about fantasy football. And I say Brian will be happy about that because it's fantasy football, but we're also dissing Baker, so he equally won't be happy with that one either. Excellent, Gav. I enjoyed that wee segment. I put you on the spot there and you didn't know what to come up with, so I do. You did some good answers there. I do like your answers. Those that are watching, listening, if you get any different answers from Gav, send us your one sentence answers to those points. Right, Gav, so week 9's on the horizon. So we're going to finish off by having a quick look at 2 games on the schedule next week. So, first of all, what game are you looking forward to in week 9 and why?
So I think it's really got to go with the obvious answer on this one. We've got Bills against Chiefs. This has been a regular fixture of the AFC Championship, or certainly the playoffs over the past few years. And also quite an interesting one, just in the sense that we're talking about how Kansas City are on the way back, but actually in the last 4 seasons, the Bills have won the regular season matchup. Obviously, Chiefs fans will quite rightly say they win the big one, but the history shows that if we're focusing on the here and now, the Bills have to be the favourites for this one. So it's going to be a really interesting one to watch because we talk about how the Chiefs are coming back. They've got to catch up on the Broncos. It's a competitive division this year. And obviously this is a potential to puncture that bandwagon.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like you say, the Broncos are on bye week? No, the Broncos have got Houston next week. The Broncos are a very winnable game, so if the Chiefs have got any chance of wanting to catch the Broncos, are going to have to beat the Bills next week. So, for me, I have spoken about these teams quite a lot this week and on the show, and they're both playing each other this week. It's the Colts versus the Steelers for me. It's a really intriguing matchup. So I said earlier, I expect the Ravens to win on Thursday night at the Dolphins. And that's despite the Dolphins beating the Falcons this week, because that's just a false result, the same as it was with the Panthers when they beat the Falcons. If the Colts juggernaut continues this week, then the Ravens get into a very good position for Lamar Jackson coming back next week. So I expect that to be a great game. I do expect the Colts to go on and win it. So that just reignites the AFC North. So I'm really looking forward to watching that game. For those who are on the schedule, are wondering, we have Colts against Steelers as one of the early games, and the Chiefs against the Bills as the 9:25 UK time kickoff. So I do not know what games are on TV this week yet, but the Chiefs and the Bills definitely will. We'll see what Sky and Channel 5 serve up for the early games for us in the UK. All right, Gav, well, that wraps up another episode for us around the NFL. We will be back next week with all the goings on from week 9. It is myself and Sarah next week, so that will be another good chat for us. In the meantime, check out our latest In Conversation With, talking with Team GB. on all things European Championships. That's on our YouTube and all podcast platforms. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And always, until next time, we'll see you soon.